Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and presented by Rockpoint Bank and EPB. Rockpoint Bank, from Chattanooga for Chattanooga. And EPB, get EPB's fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Marcia Kling, better known to generations of Chattanoogans as Miss Marcia, the host of Romper Room School and Funtime on WTVC television. Marcia's educational children's shows helped raise many of today's leaders in Chattanooga. Marcia, before we find out how a girl from Peekskill, New York ended up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
Oh, tea, Michael, tea. Can't you tell by looking at me?
It's done you good.
I never have drunk coffee.
You have not? I did not know that.
But I do love English breakfast tea
Is that
of any
green
kind.
tea or black tea?
Oh, no, I don't care for green tea. It doesn't give me the buzz I need.
It's kind of weak, isn't it?
Yeah, I really love black tea.
You know, we've had a number of tea drinkers here.
Really?
Yeah, quite a few. There's a lot of people that don't drink coffee. And
you know, I'm always surprised about that. My college roommate, who was my roommate for all 4 years and my best friend for the rest of her life, walked around with a cup of coffee. She still did it as an adult in the working world, but she drank coffee all the time and never could persuade me to drink it. And my parents drank coffee. In fact, they had coffee every night after dinner. So how I escaped, I don't know, but I do love my tea.
I think it's one of those things that if you don't try it or if you don't get immediate satisfaction out of it, it's like, okay, tried it. Don't need that. I mean, I didn't really start drinking coffee till I was in my 20s.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, the stress of the television business.
Yes, I understand something about that, Michael.
Yes, you do, and I'm so glad you're here. I had the privilege of working with you for, I don't know, we probably worked together 10 years,
13 years.
13 years.
You came in 2000. Is that right?
2004.
Oh, 4. Okay, so 9 years.
Yeah, 9 years.
You paid me the greatest compliment I've ever had, Michael.
Oh, geez, Pete, I hope it was good.
When I got ready to retire and submitted my letters of resignation to you, you asked me, now I'll tell everybody, I was 79 years old when I retired, and you asked me if I thought I really was ready to retire. You didn't take a moment to breathe a sigh of relief because that lady's finally leaving.
No, not at all.
You paid me a lovely compliment by making me feel like you would let me stay if I really did want to.
I would hire you today. I mean, you were Channel 9, at least in my eyes and the community's eyes. And it was a privilege to work with you. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast with you is one is to talk about your life, and two is for everyone to see the Miss Marcia I know. And because what you saw on television is what you get in person. So why don't we start at the beginning? You were born in Peekskill, New York?
I was.
Yeah.
It's in Westchester County, about 35 miles or so out of New York City. And in my time there, neither of my parents was a native of Peekskill. My mother was from Ohio. My dad was from northern New York State up on the Canadian border. But they were both very established in the community. My mother was an actress. My dad was a theatrical director, as well as eventually the principal of the high school. And it was just a very nice place to grow up. Part of that, of course, is because of the time.
Yeah.
It was the 1940s. Early 1950s.
Post-war.
And,
country's growing.
Life was different in those days, no matter how you look at it. And the town was a pretty town, and it was known as the friendliest town in the Hudson River Valley. And I think it was.
Yeah.
I always felt that way about it.
Now, you have siblings?
I have a sister.
You have a sister?
Who is 9 years younger than I am.
Oh, so you almost grew up separately.
That's exactly right, and she's always very happy to tell people that I'm 9 years older than she. And yes, in fact, sometimes, Michael, I say to her, I think we must have been raised by 2 different mothers because the things that, she brings up, I don't remember,
Well,
and the things that I tell her or the way I live my life, as a homemaker, she said, "That doesn't look like mother."
well, in a sense, you were raised by 2 different mothers. I'm one of 7, and there's a 16-year difference between the oldest and the youngest.
Oh.
So my youngest sister lived a completely different life than the rest of us. She pretty much grew up as an only child.
Yeah.
Because we were all out of the house by the time she came along for the most part.
Right. And that's true. You do kind of get the only child experience, when it's like that, when there are situations like that.
So both your parents were involved with the arts in the community?
Yes. Um, my dad directed what was the community theater, uh, in my early days. As life went on and got very much more complicated, he had to give it up. But, um, I was very fortunate, Michael, because in those days, there were not ready babysitters.
Yeah.
And, so I was dragged. I didn't feel like I was being dragged. I loved going to the rehearsals. And, I think that's where I got bitten by the performing arts bug because I've always been interested in theater and majored in theater, as a matter of fact,
So
when I
that
went to
really
college.
fed that interest in it, the fact that it was so present as you were growing up. You wanted to do more of it.
Yes.
One of the things you mentioned when I asked you just for some background information, and you just mentioned how the times were different as you were
Yes.
growing up. You talked about a lot of learning at the dinner table with your parents in conversations. And can you talk a little bit about that, how the family dinner really spurred your interest in learning and
Everything, yes. Yes, I loved our family dinners, and I didn't realize how much I loved them until I looked back on them. As I said, my dad was principal of the high school, and my mother did not work outside the home, but she was very active in a number of things. So there was always a lot of conversation about what was going on in everybody's life. But there was also, my parents were both very interested in the world. They had a wide world view for which I've always been grateful, because our nighttime conversations over dinner were really very interesting, and my parents didn't always agree on matters political or whatever, but they taught me how to disagree without being disagreeable.
great way to put it.
And I thought that was a good lesson to have learned. And I just am very grateful for that experience.
So that spurred your curiosity and want to learn throughout your whole life.
Yes. Curiosity is one of the most important qualities I think anybody can have. A curiosity about everything. That's how you learn.
So as you're growing up in Peekskill, and you're in high school,
Yes.
were you working any part-time jobs or doing anything?
Yes. The best thing I ever did occurred after my 16th birthday, the day after my birthday, without telling anybody. I went down to, we had an F.W. Woolworth, of course,
Mhm.
but there was another, what I would refer to now as still as a five and dime. It was called Kittinger's, an H.L. Green company. I don't know that that'll mean a thing to your listeners, but it was a widely known chain in that part of the world. Anyway, I applied for a job, and I was hired right away. And then I went home and told my parents. My mother thought it was wonderful. She was very glad I had done that. My dad was less enthusiastic about it. He was afraid that I was going to not be able to maintain my good grades.
Right.
And my after-school activities, because I had a lot of those already on my plate.
In addition to theater?
Yes, very active in the theater program in my high school, and I sang with a couple of select choirs also, again, part of the high school program. And, so he and I talked about it, and he expressed what his concerns were, and I said, "Well, I really wanna do this, and, I'll make a bargain with you. If my grades slip, or if I can't do what I'm committed to do, I'll stop working." But you know what? I kept that job, for the last 2 years of my high school and then the first 2 years of college when I would come home for winter vacation, for example.
You know, that doesn't surprise me that you were able to keep your job and your grades up.
Well, it took some doing, but I think, again, that was a major lesson for me, Michael, because you have to learn to manage your time.
Right.
And, I certainly had to do that if I were going to keep up with my end of the bargain with my dad, and I found that it was not difficult to do. It just took a little thinking about how I was going to do it, and that, I think, was also a good lesson.
Yeah.
You have to be creative in how you handle your time.
Yeah, because you only have so much and you gotta get everything done. Did working in a retail job like that, what did that teach you about working with the public?
That's why I consider it the best thing that I ever did. I've always been very able to make good friendships, and I don't ever feel uncomfortable with people. But I learned so much about human nature. As I said, this was essentially a five and dime, but it had, a dress shop and a millinery studio, and I think that's so funny because they had some very pretty hats.
Oh, I bet, and they don't do that anymore.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And I was usually assigned to work in that part of the store, and, some of your older listeners may remember the time when we used to measure stockings. Can you believe you'd take a pair of stockings out of a wrapper of some sort, and you had a yardstick and you measured them, and women knew what they had to have in terms of size that way. That fortunately is gone.
Yeah.
But there were, it was the dealing with people. That was just
really prepared you for later in life.
Yes, it did.
No matter what you did.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of paint the picture. You're growing up in Peekskill, New York, up in the Northeast. Your parents are very involved in the community and theater and the arts. You have great conversations at the dinner table, but it comes time to go to college. And I look at that and I go, you're going somewhere in the Northeast, but you didn't.
No, I didn't. And there again, this was a blessing in my life because as principal of the high school, my dad went up there the day after Thanksgiving of my senior year, and I was able to, because of my grades, I could have gone to any New York State school with no problem. The women in my father's family had gone to Vassar. Vassar was only 30 miles away from our home, and I really was not interested in it. I did go look at it, but I was not really interested for a lot of reasons.
Too close to home,
yeah. And both my parents wanted me to go away, too.
Yeah.
They didn't want me to be close, to come home every weekend.
Right.
So anyway, Daddy brought home 3 catalogs from the guidance office, and the one on top was a catalog for Maryville College in Maryville, Tennessee. I knew nothing about it. My father was a Presbyterian, but he went to church with us, which my mother was Methodist, and that's where we went to church. And I had no Presbyterian background, so I'd never even heard of Maryville. And Daddy said, look these over and see if there's any interest. And he said, the one on top, I've considered going to Maryville College. Now, as I told you, my dad was from way up on the Canadian border. I don't know how he would have done that, but anyway, I sat down that day and I started with Maryville, and not even halfway through, I knew it was exactly where I wanted to go to school. And if you ask me why, I'm not going to be able to tell you. But there was a feeling that pervaded, and I knew that that was where I wanted to go. Well, it turned out that two boys I had known in the preceding graduating class were students there. I hadn't paid any attention to where they had gone to school.
So two boys in the class ahead
Not
of you?
Not my class, in the class before
ahead of
mine. They'd already graduated.
But in your high school?
Yeah.
Went to Maryville?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, it is. You're absolutely right. So when they came home for winter break, and in those days at Maryville, winter break used to be 4 weeks long. They came and had dinner with us one night, and we talked about the school, and all it did was reinforce the fact that this was the school for me.
And you haven't been there to see it?
No, and I wasn't going to get to go there either.
So you were going on faith?
Yes. So anyway, it was interesting how it came about, and I loved every minute of my 4 years on that campus.
So you decide to go to Maryville, and this is the late 40s, early 50s. Did you drive? Did you fly there?
Well, that's another tale. My parents were going to drive me, and then at the last minute, Daddy could not get off. There had been a very sad event involving one of the students at the high school, and he had to be there. So we quickly switched, and another boy from my graduating class was going to go to Maryville also, and he was going by train anyway. So my parents arranged for me to go from New York, Grand Central Station, to Maryville.
What an adventure.
It was.
So you get there sight unseen. What's your first impression?
The campus was beautiful. My first impression, however, is we were riding from Knoxville in a cab to Maryville, and we passed all this red dirt. I'd never seen red dirt. I'd only seen rich black soil.
Not the red clay we're used to.
Yeah. Huh? And you don't see that anymore, but boy, in that day, it was pervasive. And that was interesting. So I was trying to get it out of my clothes. But we got on campus, and as I say, I thought the school was beautiful. Yeah. And they had arranged for counselors to be on hand. So I met some very nice students at the very first, and felt very much at home. Then my roommate didn't show up. She and I had conversed and written to one another.
And where was she
from?
But
for some reason, she didn't show. So I was by myself for a little while. And then, as I say, my friend forever and I became roommates.
Well, then that was meant to be. Because the first one didn't show up. You got the second one, you're friends forever.
Yes.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
What did you major in at Maryville?
I majored in what was called speech and theater.
And can you talk a little bit about your college days, what those were like? Oh. And were you working at all or just concentrating on school?
Well, I guess I was working, but you wouldn't call it that. I was waiting table for 18 cents a meal.
18 cents a meal? They paid you by the meal?
And I did that because I wanted to control the makeup of the table I was serving. The first table I was assigned to, and my roommate, whose name was Jackie, she and I were assigned to the same table. And there were a couple of people at the table who were pretty negative, and so we talked about it, and it was decided that I would become the waitress. She couldn't. She was she was a music major, and they had a tighter schedule than I did with needing to practice and that sort of thing. So anyway, I waited table for 3 years, and that was a good experience too.
Oh, yeah, again,
Put
dealing
me
with
in
the
my
public?
place more than once, I'll tell you. I learned again from my peers
Yeah.
what was acceptable, what was not, and they learned from me too.
How did you adjust to East Tennessee? Was that much of a culture shock for you?
Yes and no. The Maryville campus was not a culture shock. It was a very cultured environment, as a matter of fact. We had some excellent guests on campus from time to time, and it was just a very nice, in some ways, very insular
Yeah.
environment. And sometimes I would get a little bit concerned about that because I guess maybe that was kind of a culture
Yeah.
shock. I hadn't been insulated from the world. But when I graduated, I thought back over my 4 years and I thought that isolation or insulation, not isolation,
Yeah.
but
Insulation.
insulation, was not a bad thing because I had so much to do. I was in several clubs and organizations, um, and I I played the leading role in all but 2 of the plays that occurred on campus while
Mhm.
I was there, and that meant a lot of
Oh,
rehearsal.
I bet.
And, in order to keep my grades up again, installation was not a bad thing for me. It really provided me a way to focus on what needed to be focused upon.
So as you got ready to graduate and you're trying to determine what you wanna do, what are your options? Do you go back to New York? Do you wanna explore the world? What are you gonna do?
Well, my options were going back to New York. That was all I had ever thought about, Michael, from the time I was 4 years old and got to be on stage with my mother.
You did get the
I
bug.
was really bitten. I never wanted anything else. I never thought about doing anything else. The thing about Maryville that I think was very, very important for me and for all of its graduates, it is a liberal arts institution, and you get a smattering of all kinds of things, and sometimes you get more than a smattering. And as somebody once said to me, "You've never done anything that you were trained for," and that is the truth.
It's
But
interesting.
I was trained for everything I ever did by the education I received at Maryville.
I think that's an important point. There's so many people who aren't doing what they went to school for, but there's elements of everything they've been trained in that benefit them in what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely.
So when you graduate,
Well,
what was the
I
plan?
need to tell you that just I think in April before I graduated in May, or maybe I guess not, it must have been earlier than that, um, maybe March. We had chapel every day at Maryville in those days. They don't anymore, but I loved it. And after chapel one morning, the head of the sociology department came up to me, and I knew him kind of as a friend. I never had him as an instructor or as a teacher. Uh, but he came up to me and he said, "There's a church in Chattanooga that needs a director of Christian education, and I think you should apply for it." Well, that came out of the blue.
Did you even know where Chattanooga was?
Well, sort
Other
of.
than in Tennessee?
I found out quickly. And the thing about it is, I had no preparation in Christian education as
Right.
such. I had one course, and I had the woman who was the professor was excellent, and she made sure that we had a broad understanding of what Christian education should be. So I didn't feel completely at sea, but pretty much so. Anyway, I told Dr. Case, I don't think I'm qualified. He said, "I think you are." So I went home and thought about it and decided that I've never been to Chattanooga. I think I'd love to come down and see what the city's all about. Isn't that tacky?
No, I think that's great.
So I flew into Chattanooga on a Saturday morning and spent the 2 days with the session at Second Presbyterian Church. I'm sorry, Northside Presbyterian. I'm currently a member of Second Presbyterian. Anyway, Northside Presbyterian. And I liked the people very, very much. And happily, the feeling was mutual. And they asked me to become their Christian education director. Now, I couldn't commit somehow. I just wasn't sure that that's the way I wanted to go, since I had planned to go back. And again, with my dad saying to me, I will pay for 1 year in New York. But if you don't have employment by the end of that year, then I want you to plan to go to get your master's.
Yeah.
So that you can be employable. And so I could have gone in that direction. Now, Michael, you've known me for a long time. Your audience doesn't know me at all, but
I think more know you than you realize.
That, you know that faith plays a great important part in my life.
Yep.
And so I turned this over to the Lord and asked him to direct me. And it didn't come quickly. In fact, I was at rehearsal one day in the theater, and the phone rang, and it was the church, the minister at the church calling, saying, we have to have an answer. Are you going to come and be with us or not? And so I said, can you give me just a little while? And I went back to my room, my dorm room, and I opened my Bible, and it fell open to the book that says, he who loses his life for my sake and the gospel's shall surely find it. And I took that as my answer. So it turned out to be the absolute truth. And I did take the job, and I came here in August of that year and spent 2 very interesting years at Northside Presbyterian.
And I love how faith works into this. If at any point in that first year or two, did you question your decision at all?
I absolutely did, and this is another learning experience for me. I always thought that our ministers knew everything and were wonderful and perfect, and I didn't find the minister at this church to be that. He was very timid and had a hard time making up his mind.
Yeah.
He is the reason I left the church, because after 2 years, which is what I had said I would give them, I knew I couldn't continue to work with someone. There's nothing wrong with him. He was a very nice man. But in terms of working with other people, it was difficult for him.
Yeah, leadership and management is not for everyone. So 2 years at Northside.
Mm-hmm.
Do you leave Chattanooga after that?
I did. I went back to my home, to Peekskill.
Okay.
And I was immediately asked to be there, the DCE, Director of Christian Education, at the church I had grown up in.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's what I did for the next year. And the reason I went home was because I needed to make up my mind about getting married. I wasn't sure that was for me, that was what I wanted to do. And David, my husband, had already asked me to marry him. And
so you met David while you were in Chattanooga, and
right
he
after
wants to get married, and you go back to New York to think about it.
Well, it took us 3 years, but we did make it.
Yeah.
And since we've been married for 67 years, I guess
it stuck.
It was the right decision.
Worked out pretty well, didn't it?
Yeah.
So you're in New York, you're going back, you're marrying David, you're going to be a Chattanoogan from that point on.
Yes.
And you come back, what do you do in terms of?
Well, once again, and you can see the recurring pattern, David worked at Ross Meehan Foundries. He was newly back in Chattanooga himself because he had come home the year we met. He had come home from the service, and he was at Tennessee Tech, and he finished up his 2 years there, and then he came back to Chattanooga and worked at Ross Meehan Foundries. And he had, again, very nice people to work with. And one family in particular was so kind to us, and they invited us for dinner one night at the same time that they had their Catholic priest for dinner also, Father Albert Senior. And before the dinner was over, Father Senior said to me, he was organizing the faculty at the newly formed St. Jude, and he said, I would like for you to come to work for us. So, and that was just, gosh, I don't know, maybe 2 months after we had come back, maybe less than that. So in the fall of that year, I became the 4th and 5th grade teacher. I had 36 kids. They wouldn't allow that these days. And I was untrained, and here I was thrown into that milieu. But it was wonderful. I loved it. I loved all the families. My children were wonderful. I had mischievous kids, because you always do.
Yep, that's that age.
5th grade especially.
See,
but so many of those young people, when I see them now, remember that time fondly.
How could they forget? And I never knew you taught at St. Jude. But when we first moved to town, our girls went to St. Jude.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah.
Did they, rather?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, it was a new school, but the parents were so supportive,
right,
and so good. And
so you're working at St. Jude. How does everything change and you become Miss Marcia and television? How does television come into it? Or
this is a long story.
I know.
I was going to go back to St. Jude, but our first child arrived on the first day of school, so that didn't work out. And I knew I couldn't manage it. So
it's a lot.
I resigned and was just a stay-at-home mom. And then at that time, the Chattanooga Little Theater is what it was called formerly, was organizing a youth program, and I had been invited to be part of that committee. Well, I had my little baby and couldn't really attend meetings very well, but the chairman of the committee said, don't worry about it. I'll call you and tell you everything that has gone on in our meetings, which she faithfully did. I did not know her, but we became friends over the phone. And so when the committee was invited to participate in a program, I think at Channel 12, if I remember correctly, we were going to be, the program is called Lunch and Fun. Does that sound familiar to you in the annals of Chattanooga history? Well, I had a babysitter who was coming to take care of my son, and she was a neighbor, and for some reason she was a little delayed. So when I got to the studio, the group had already been taken in and were seated, and a very famous Chattanooga personality, Betty Mack, whom I knew, came out to the booth where I was and said, let me take you in. And I said, oh, please, no, I don't want to do that. She said, well, we have a viewing booth upstairs, so let's go up there. We can see better. The other thing about that, Michael, is if I'd been on the floor, I would not have heard the chairman of this committee say, or be identified, first of all, as Miss Clara from Romper School. And she had already told me that she was getting ready with her husband to go to Alaska.
Oh, wow.
To leave Chattanooga. And so when I got home, I called her and I told her that I had heard her say what they were going to be doing, and I said, has somebody been hired to replace you?" And she said, "No." And when I told her what my background was, she said, "You immediately must get on the stick
Yeah.
and apply for this job." It was a part-time job, and it just seemed unnatural. And sure enough, it was. I was hired. I don't know how many people auditioned,
Mhm.
but I was hired right after my audition.
Well, it seems like a
And
perfect fit, too.
I'm
It
sorry?
seems like a perfect fit for you.
Yes, that's right. Um, it brought everything together that I enjoyed. I loved working with children,
Yeah.
and I'm also a performer
Right.
by nature. So, anyway, that's how that all came about.
So at that time, there's only 3 television
Yes.
stations, and television that's the big growth decade for television. But it started out not as Funtime, but as Romper Room School.
Yes.
So you did that your first year. When did it become Funtime?
Well, the general manager at News Channel 9, who was named Reeve Owen, called me into his office one day and he said, "I don't like the association with Romper Room School."
Because that was a national
It was syndicated. It was
syndicated, yeah.
international in that day,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact. And I knew exactly what was disturbing him. It disturbed me too, because to be honest, I felt the program was developed to sell toys for the company that.
Probably was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he said, "Would you like to develop a program of your own design?" And that was thrilling to me because there were very few public kindergartens. If I'm not mistaken, in 1961, there were probably 2 that I can think of. There may have been more, and I may not have known about them. So the kindergarten experience was not available to most children. But I did know, because I'd gone to kindergarten, I did know what the expectations were. So I developed a format for the show and turned it in, and Mr. Owen approved everything. And we had a little issue because I did have a non-compete clause in my contract, but he said that the station would take care of it if there were any issue. And there was a little bit of pushback, but not badly. And so that's how Funtime came about.
So basically, you were able to create an educational children's show that's fun
Exactly.
long before Sesame Street.
Yes. Yes, I'm glad you noticed that. You know, my nose has always been a little out of joint because Sesame Street is what everybody thinks
Yeah.
was the first program for
Right.
preschool children, and it wasn't.
How unusual was it for a local market to be doing an educational type kid show like that?
Very unusual. We were not a revenue generator.
Right.
And you know how important that is for everything.
Yep.
It's gotten increasingly so, but
Yeah.
it was true in that day too. And I had a very small budget, but that was okay because I wanted to show parents how they could create learning tools
Yep.
from what they have around the house. They didn't have to be well-to-do. They didn't have to buy boxed toys. We painted with kitchen tools, for example. Not just we did finger painting also, but we painted with things like potato mashers. The kids loved doing that.
So you
and
just took
oranges.
stuff around the house. You would take them to have fun with.
Yeah.
So was the show a hit right away?
I think it was.
Yeah. People were
It
probably
lasted
thirsty
for
for it.
15 years.
Yeah. And if you can talk a little bit about the show itself and some of the challenges you had, because during the show you had some health challenges, didn't you?
Oh, yes, I did. In 1973, in April of 1973, I had a heavy vocal schedule. It was Holy Week, and I was a soloist at Second Presbyterian Church and had a very heavy vocal schedule. But I also had a really bad cold, and I knew my otolaryngologist couldn't cure my cold, but I hoped he could give me something to get me through the week. And he did a very deep dive into my larynx and so forth, and at the end of my appointment, he said, "There's a funny little something at the base of your tongue. I think it's perfectly okay, but I want you to come back in 6 months and let me look at it again." Now, Michael, I am not always compliant, and I feel good almost all the time.
Well, you always have a positive attitude,
So
too.
I almost didn't go back, but I had such respect for Dr. Douglas Chamberlain that I did go back. And in his office, he did a deep biopsy and got the tissue, and it bled a great deal and didn't stop when I left. He thought it would, but he gave me where he was going to be that evening. It was a Friday, and he was going to be at the Y watching wrestling. And he gave me a phone number to reach him at. So it didn't stop by 10:30 at night, and David said he was going to call the doctor. And he had us meet him at his office, and he was not too he was able to staunch the bleeding, and he wasn't too concerned. He said to me, healthy tissue bleeds and unhealthy tissue doesn't, so I'm not really too worried, but I want you to see somebody who sees more patients with unusual conditions than I do. So he sent me to Dr. Jack Evans. And when I went to Dr. Evans, he did a series of outpatient visits at Memorial or Common Spirit Hospital. And then he said to me, this is right before Christmas, so you know how crazy it was. We had two young children with long Santa Claus lists. And he told me he wanted me to have an in-depth biopsy, and it could not be done in the office. It had to be done in the hospital.
Oh.
And he set me up for January 4th of the next year, 1974. And I went, and when he came to see me, he said, "I don't have the pathology report, but I think everything's okay." And he sent me home. That was on a Thursday. The next Tuesday at 5:00 in the afternoon, the absolute witching hour for any mother.
Yeah.
The phone rang and I answered it. I had not been answering it because I wasn't really supposed to be talking. And it was Dr. Evans, and he said, "This is Jack Evans. Can you talk?" And I said, I wanted to say, "You can hear me, Dr. Evans," but I didn't. I said, "Yes, I can do okay." And he said, "Well, I have the pathology report, and it's bad.
Oh.
In fact, it's very bad. The tumor has been seen by 27 doctors at the National Institutes of Health Cancer Division, and they're all, it is malignant, and so, and at that point, I said, I put the phone down, and before I did, I said, "Dr. Evans, don't tell me anymore. I can't hear it." And I ran to the furthest room in our home at that moment, which happened to be our daughter's bedroom. And while I was there weeping because everything was so empty, I can't tell you the empty feeling I had. I had no hope.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going to happen. And then I heard the Lord say to me, and I know people are going to say that's not possible, but I promise you, I heard, "Marcia Kling, you foolish child, have I ever left you alone before? And have you ever needed me the way you do now?" And of course, the answer to both of those questions was no, Lord.
Yeah.
And with that came an infusion of peace that lasted me from that day until this. And I'm not unique in that. After I had my surgery, I was asked to visit many cancer patients. And most of them said exactly the same thing, that as awful as the news was when they received it, they all felt an infusion of peace.
Yeah.
And that allowed them to move forward with what had to be done. So anyway, I had to tell Mr. Owen, I didn't tell you that we had a little girl in 1964, and Mr. Owen could have let me go at that point immediately. There were no such things as maternity leaves,
Right.
particularly not in television, and that was what I expected would happen. So I was very surprised when he said to me, "You can have as long as you need to recover, and I'm going to pay you half salary while you're gone."
Wow.
This was June when I left, and he did exactly that. I came back in October of that 1964 year, but he always supported me so. And you can understand, having been in that role, what a balance it was for him to let
absolutely.
me. And then when I went to see him, when I got this
Diagnosis.
The diagnosis, and when I'd been to see the doctor, and he told me that you might as well make up your mind. You'll never speak or sing again.
So you've been told by the doctor, you have this surgery, you will never speak or sing again.
Yeah.
And
that's what they told me here.
That was your world.
Yes, that's exactly right. It was everything I did and loved.
Yeah.
But nobody really knows. Nobody knew. They tell me that this was the first time this had ever been seen in Chattanooga. So there was no history. And when I went to see Dr. Evans and he said that to me, I said, "I'd like a second opinion." That was not me. I grew up in an era when doctors knew everything.
Yeah, they were the white coats and
Yep. And he was so gracious. He said, "There are 6 people in this country that I would trust, 2 in particular, and one was a Dr. John Conley in New York. And as I've expressed to you already, I'm a native of that area. My parents were snowbirds, so they were in Florida, but my sister lived in Peekskill, and she had room enough for us to stay with her when we went up, and before I saw Dr. Conley. And I assumed Dr. Conley was just going to give me a second look and second opinion, but he said he wanted to do the surgery. And there again, my mother knew Dr. Conley's name. I'd never heard of him, but I had no idea that he was considered the best head neck cancer doctor in the U.S. And years later in the New York Times, when I read an article about him, he was identified as the best head neck cancer surgeon in the world.
What a blessing to have been referred to that.
Just amazing.
After your surgery, what was the process, or how long did it take you to regain your speech?
Actually, I don't think it took that long. One thing is that because of my speech training, I did know some things to do. But the other thing is I had a wonderful therapist at the Speech and Hearing Center. David had, the day after we came back from New York, I could not speak. All I could do was make guttural sounds. And that day after we came home, David went to the Speech and Hearing Center, and they said they'd never dealt with anything like this, but that they would devise a program, and that's what they did. And I went there from January until I went back on the air May the 8th.
Wow, so 5 months. What was that first day back on the air like for you? Was it scary? Was it?
Yes, it was. For one thing, my voice was not dependable, and I didn't know whether I would lose it during the course of the program. It was an hour long, so there was a lot of time to lose things.
Yeah.
But the children were wonderful, and it worked out very, very well. And I was so grateful to be there.
Yeah, I bet it had to be exuberating. How much longer did Funtime go after that? How many more years?
Well, we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah.
That was 1974. I lost both my babies at one fell swoop on August the 31st of 1978. The day we took our son to Georgetown University to begin college was the day that Funtime came to an end.
Oh.
And that was an emotional moment for me.
You put your heart and soul in it.
Yeah.
And I could, my wife, Susie, grew up in the Cleveland area. And I can tell you that the effect that show has had on our generation and the generational leaders today. She has a good friend who calls her on her birthday every year and sings your birthday song to her.
It's a good thing. That song is going to die when I do if you all don't do it.
Oh, no. And you wrote that song, right?
No.
No? Oh, I thought you did.
I know. Everybody thinks so. I never made that claim.
but everyone knows it is Miss Marcia's birthday song.
Yeah. And it always thrills me. I really mean this. When I go to the grocery store and meet somebody whom I don't know, and they tell me that they call their siblings or friends and sing the Miss Marcia birthday song, makes me feel very good. I'm so glad it.
Well, I got to tell you one quick story before we run out of time. I used to encourage all the salespeople in particular to bring clients into the station so they could, because television's magic, it's a studio and it's this. So I've got one gentleman, I'm touring him on the station, and we walk into the newsroom, and I said, "Yes, here's our newsroom." And he looks over and he goes, "Is that Miss Marcia over there?" And I said, "Yeah, that's Miss Marcia." And he says, "Can I meet her? I was on Funtime." So even here at that time, this guy was probably late 40s, still just had that amazement of being able to meet Miss Marcia.
Well,
so your effect on not just television in this market, but everyone in this market has been tremendous.
Michael, people often thank me.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to them, and I mean this so sincerely, it's I who thank you. When I was doing Funtime and anything I ever did on air, I never thought about the residual benefits. They have been amazing. Just to know that people still remember is amazing.
Yeah. Well, they'll never forget you. I can guarantee you that. I do want to get to one more question before we get to the last question. You were extremely involved in the community throughout your entire career, with nonprofits, with things like that. Why is that so important for a citizen to be involved?
The community is only as strong as its weakest link. And we have to help those people whom life appears to have left behind if we want the community to be strong and good for everyone. I learned that from my parents, who were very involved, as you've already said. But from my own experience, I know how true that is. May I demonstrate one of my prejudices?
Absolutely. Anything you want to do.
Public education. It's obvious why I have a bent in that direction. But it is the undergirding of our society. And if we don't support it And if we don't provide the best education possible for every child, we are losing something very, very valuable. And I get very upset when I hear people criticize the public schools. I'm sure there are weaknesses, but if they're not doing anything to correct those weaknesses, or if their experience with public education stems from when they were in school decades ago, they don't have the right to say anything. I think public school teachers are wonderful. I'm very lucky. I'm an honorary member of an organization called Alpha Delta Kappa, which is a teaching sorority for female educators. And I have met such wonderful women through that organization, and they are representative of what we have in our public schools. My husband is a graduate of a private school, rather. When it came time for our older child to go to junior high school, he applied for the same school that David graduated from, but not with a lot of enthusiasm. And when he was accepted, he told us he did not want to accept the place that was reserved for him at that point, because he wanted to stay with his public school friends. And I just think it's unfortunate that we talk about something that perhaps we have no experience with, because everything you say about an institution makes an impression in somebody's mind, whether it's correct or not. And if it's not correct, then we are guilty of passing along a false impression, which is wrong.
And I agree. We've got to have the best education possible, because it doesn't negatively affect us today. It's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I don't think if you have children in private school and that's where they want to be and where you want them to be, that's fine. But somehow or the other, I think you still have to find a way to support public education. You can't think that the world is going to be wonderful because your child graduates with a very fine education from a private school. You have to think about the other child at the other end of the spectrum who has no opportunities.
Yeah, and opportunity is such a great word for that, because without it, they won't have opportunities. Before I get to my last question, I do want to remind listeners who makes my morning cup possible. It's a big thank you to our presenting sponsors, EPB and Rockpoint Bank. Get EPB fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet, and Rockpoint Bank, your local banking partner, your business, your bank, your future. And I do want to remind listeners of My Morning Cup, if you do like the podcast, please leave us a review on whichever listening platform you utilize. Last question for you, and I'm going to get you out of here. What would you tell that 25-year-old Miss Marcia is important for a happy life?
Enjoy every minute. The good ones, but the bad ones too, because you can learn an awful lot from those not so pleasant experiences. Just be alive to everything that's out there for you.
Just embrace life.
Embrace life, yes.
Yeah. And such an important point. You learn more from the bad things or the failures or the setbacks. Victory gives you this sense of you've done everything right and there's nothing to learn. But when you have a setback, boy, that's what really sets you up for victory. Thank you for doing this.
Well, I think we've gone on and on. I think I've gone on and on. But, Michael, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I've been wanting to do this for some time, and I always enjoy being with you and seeing you and talking to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a
podcast by Constant Media Advisors. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.